Well, it's nice to be back in Goa. Raj and Dipti, you've made Goa a second home to me now, especially the center. So, so when Durva asked me to come here, I had no hesitation at all. These chairs are a bit formal, I feel like they're a bit like the wedding throne that newlyweds sit on, except that they're arty, so it's like arty newlyweds. Now when you look at the title of the book, Art is written in a much bigger font than Millionaires. Is that accidental or deliberate?
Completely deliberate. We're talking about, what people can make money, there are ways of making money, but we're focusing on, maximizing your exposure to art.
Yeah, but I want to begin really by asking you what made you write this book, because generally, there's a tendency that if you are a lover of art, you don't want to talk about the money part, right? Because it is not the right thing to do. You talk about art as an aesthetic experience, and money is incidental. Now we know this is not so at all, but that's the impression everyone wants to give. Now you've gone against that by emphasizing the money part.
Yeah, I think it's basically the motivation behind most people's art buying that I like the title of the book. I think most people, while it's not a very hush-hush thing to talk about money and market, I want to look at, unless we identify a problem and see it as it is, and then try and better it and improve it and find a solution to it, is the only way to get out of the problem. By denying what is, or by sort of glossing over what is a problem may not necessarily be the right, approach. So I think it was very different. It was even a very bold approach, I might say, to come up with secrets of the art millionaires. But I think keeping in line with the mission of Breathe Arts, which is to help people become abundantly wealthy through secrets of the art millionaires. Breathe Arts, our mission is also to add transparency to the otherwise non-transparent art market. So, keeping in line with all of those, ideas and mission, the book was written to give otherwise the knowledge that will only be available to a privileged buyer who is a privileged buyer of reality, to make that available to just about everybody at before sort of getting. The only way to learn right now in the art market is to make expensive mistakes while buying. And there is nowhere where there is no book that I found this as a gap. I found that there was nothing that addressed like a manual on how do I protect my interest, what is it that I buy, what's the price point, and it's all very subjective. So there isn't like an authoritative manual that spells it out.
Well, it's obvious why, because the art gallery owner or the art consultant or the dealer does not want to give away these secrets because they are out of jobs then.
Correct. So I think it's going against the market, because most people in the market believe that if they share these secrets, other people will also have the same chances of becoming rich as they did. Whereas I think at Breathe we believe, and I personally believe that if I can help others to, by giving what you want to get more of what, and it's the same sort of cycle that you create with family cycle. When you help others get what they want, you get what you want. So just letting that be.
Incidentally, when you look at the book, you'll find that it's not just addressed, as I thought it would be when I saw the title. I thought we address only to the buyer, the investor. But it starts off, in fact, advising gallery owners, and then the investor, and finally even the artist. So there are basically three parts to it. Some gallery owners may think you're a bit presumptuous. They might say, who's this young girl who's trying to teach us art tricks? Yeah, you're going to get a lot of that.
I think basically it's all in all, for the art, my response to that would be that, I think we need to make it more, right now the art market, the problem in the market as I see it is extremely exclusive, and there's just not enough buyers in the market, and that is really the bottom line problem that most galleries are facing today. So I think if we need to bring more buyers in, we need to make it more inclusive, we need to include more and more people. Even if they don't have the same sense of aesthetics as us, or maybe they don't have this, I think if they don't already come from a certain background, you still need to be open to educate and make awareness about the subject, bring about a certain, awareness about how to buy, what to start with. Maybe it's not, maybe it may or may not cultivate into a sale, but most people are not interested unless you're spending a certain amount of money.
So in one sense, you could say that is what you're saying now is easier said than done. When you say you widen the field, bring more people in, how do you actually do it in practice?
I mean,
because what we see generally in the art market, when you go to an opening, for example, you see the same set of faces, and I'm sure that happens at Sunapranta also. It becomes finally a close circle of people. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. These are people who are interested, which is why they come. But what you're saying is you want to go beyond that, and you want to get in more people.
I think the way it is right now is also, the way it is so small right now, it is also to do with the attitudes of the promoters and of the galleries, of the market on the whole. Most people feel intimidated approaching a gallery. Most people feel less than approaching a gallery or going there and asking for the price of a work, because some of them don't even want to buy, they just want to engage with the work and understand the artist's inspiration behind it or the artist's motivation. But I think there is very little scope for that sort of thing in the, I think there's a gap there. Sunapranta, for that matter, fills that sort of gap, and I think we need more and more people being able to talk about these things openly, and the only way to do that is to, share that knowledge and make more and more people aware about the workings of the market, and help other people make the money that others have in the past in the space. I mean, share mistakes. I mean, come from your own experience and really share about what matters. We just superficial sort of interactions at openings which don't really help, and don't go beyond the point, and don't sort of help anybody's cause beyond a certain sort of interaction. I think if there is a deeper need to engage and understand the motivations of all the stakeholders in the market, each one has a better chance of succeeding, because we understand what is that others, what is it that a gallery wants, so what an artist is motivated by, so what an investor wants to motivate. So I think it's just holistic understanding and making that available to as many more people, instead of just holding that information and saying that, to buy about 5 crores and I will talk to you about, businesses, otherwise I'm not interested in talking to you, don't waste my time. That attitude needs to, I think, change.
But whatever you might say, and this is a kind of idealistic view that you're espousing, but art has always been elitist, right? It has to be for various reasons. One is the aesthetics of art is not easy to understand, number one. Number two, the availability of art is confined to people who can afford it, which is immediately, reduces the group of people. So with both these things, you are talking always to a very limited audience. And how do you break that? As I said, it's all very well to say that I want more people to come, I want more people to appreciate art, I want more people to buy art, but there are huge barriers to both these.
I agree with you, but at the same time I feel that if done correctly, by understanding again the motivations of the person that you want to bring in and being able to engage with him at a deeper level and being able to understand what his motivation is, whether he wants to create work of art, whether he wants to be, which side of the market does he want to, whether he wants to be in the buying side, the selling side, the investing side, the collecting side. If there was a talk, if there was a conversation available, we had to understand that the onset, it would save a lot of people a lot of time.
Let's talk of the buyer. Because I think most people here would be either people interested in art or would be interested in being collectors,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
If there are artists, we can talk later with them. So, okay, I want to start as a collector. I have some vague interest in art. How do you start?
Research. You go and find out. You go to galleries. You do your work. You probably first buy my book, read it. It gives you some amount of understanding on how, what collectors, what are your motivations. Find out, a little more.
Your motivation is to collect good art, which you can afford.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. So go to galleries.
Now here's a big problem. The big problem is what is good art. And I think that is central to what we're discussing.
Sure.
Because if you leave it to a normal person, his or her idea of good art is something which is pretty. That's why these pavement artists paint these technicolor sunsets and sunrise, etc., etc., and most people like those. We have a real problem now with art becoming, when modern art started, there's a real problem because representational art we could see, alright, there's a lot of skill in drawing a portrait or a landscape, and we've moved away, and I think most people have a problem with that.
I think there are different buyers. I mean, the buyer has different motivations. There is a buyer that wants to buy to decorate his home, and then there is the buyer that wants to buy to build a collection, and then there is the buyer that wants to invest and make a quick buck, turning the art. And I think it is this motivation that determines A buyer to B buyer to C buyer, and I think this motivation the buyer needs to understand in conversation with people around him or people that he trusts or go to. I think the way to start would be to go to galleries to find out get a sense of the market, who are the top promoters in the market, who are their top 3 artists of the top 5 galleries, and who are, they need to understand what is happening in the primary market. Is there a demand in a secondary market for the artists that they are going to buy? If investment...
As someone starting off with collection, I have no idea who's a promoter. I have no idea what is a primary market. I have no idea what is a secondary market. All I know is, okay, you're saying go to gallery, I go to gallery. And I think that's very sound advice. To go to a number of galleries, get a sense of what people are painting now.
Yes. Get a sense of who are the artists that are, what is the trend, currently driven trends, who are the artists in demand, is there maybe you don't understand primary market, secondary market, so get to understand all of that, get to understand the workings of the market. Maybe that's why the book was written to bridge that sort of knowledge. So one reads, understand them before really going out there and buying and start spending money. You read a book, you understand, you do your research, you go to 100 galleries, you go to their openings for 1 year, before you actually start, and you understand from different stakeholders in the country, you understand from critics who they think are the top artists, you understand from curators who they think are the top artists, you understand from galleries, you understand from artists, and they all have their own, you understand from auction houses, you understand from, all the primary and secondary market forces available in the state from all stakeholders. And if you get it's some amount of work when you even buy stock, you need to do that. You need to, find out what company you want. Just, get a tip and say, okay, I want to start investing today and here I go for something. You probably, you do your research.
How approachable would an artist be to a normal person who walks into a gallery? Would he be willing to talk to them?
Yeah, why not? If an artist is able to spell out what his motivations are and is able to talk.
Not if, I'm saying, is he or is he not?
Maybe in some cases and maybe not. In most cases, most people will not be open to, because most galleries already, I would say, would have a bunch of 20 artists that they'll be working with. So I don't think most of them would be very open to meeting new artists unless they...
No, if you go to a gallery, there's an exhibition of, let's say, Anjali Alamina.
Yeah.
There's a big one in Bombay which is just open.
Right.
And she's there.
Right.
And you are a non-entity. Someone she doesn't know, someone not known, etc. And you just walk up to her and say, please talk to me about your paintings. Is she going to do that?
No, she won't, but I think that is the role of the gallery. I think the gallery would have to then find a way to, connect this buyer and this art, the artist motivation to the buyer and communicate it correctly, and be able to take in confidence the buyer and explain and sit with them and take them through a whole body of Anjali's work, for example, and take them through her.
And what you're saying is that the gallery owner is going to do that?
No, that is what I'm saying, that I feel that the gallery owner needs to do that if we want to bring in more people. So unless there is a deeper engagement with understanding the motivations of the buyer.
Either the gallery owner or the curator.
I think for all of them need to, unless the collector also needs to be clear at his end as to what his motivation is in buying this art. Do I want to just invest? Then there is a different strategy. Do I want to, just collect? Then there is, do I have a vision to build the world's largest and the best collection? Then that's a completely different vision. A collector says, okay, you know what, I want to make $1 million and I want to quickly churn these works of art, and I want my money back out of this in maybe 2 years. That's another strategy.
I don't think a collector starting off is even thinking about these things. What he or she is, I would say, what a typical collectors, the way they start off is that I have a home,
Right. I want to decorate my home.
I want to decorate my home, I want to get something which I like, but I hope it will go up in price, right? It's as simple as that. So there's no big motivation. This is as simple as it is.
See, I think that in the masculine pyramid where the first one starts buying, that's the evolution of a collector from when he starts buying for decorate his walls and the houses, the walls in the home are till you probably start buying. After that, when you start buying, you start saving it in your storage and start storing it in some external spaces. Then you start, eventually rotating your collection within your spaces. Then you buy another house to put your artworks in another space, and so on and so forth as it goes, and eventually at some point when he has way too much art is when he suddenly starts like, maybe this is an asset, I understand that it's not really a planned vision, but I think that maybe the role of a gallery would be to help him find this vision and to help him define this vision even before one begins, because one doesn't want oneself to be one doesn't want to find oneself in a place where, oh my god, this is not where I thought I wanted to be 2 years from now. Like, I have all these works of art that are really good, that I love, but they mean nothing in terms of market, or vice versa. I mean that I really have all these really stunning works, but I don't really like to live with them. So I think the definition would be to buy something that you really like within what is a good investment, for which you need the right kind of advice.
So basically what you're looking at is something you can live with, something you like, which is also going to go up in value.
Correct. For which
Which is the ideal thing. Alright. Then how do you find out whether it's going to go up in value or not?
By doing research, primary market research, basically finding out, okay,
What is your source of research?
Your source of research is the galleries, the artist himself, other collectors who have bought his work in the past, reference of his profile to see where all has he shown in the past, how many shows has he had, what are the kind of galleries he's shown with, where is the artwork displayed, in what collections is the artwork placed, how strong do you feel, is an auction house selling his work, does he have a strong secondary market presence, or is it just primarily whether the galleries are only doing his shows, how many galleries are promoting him, is his work rarely available, exclusively available?
And where does he find this information?
This information, I think my book talks about, but it's something either you have to, it's effort and time. It's sort of, if you like, this is a kind of asset class where you have to obviously spend time researching the market. You need to visit galleries, you need to be part of the whole niche and understand, and it's not just on a one fine moment when you're going to get all your answers, but I think it's a process. It's a process of a year-long process.
Okay, I accept that. Now let's take a specific artist. Let's take someone like Anil Dharker, who is now one of the biggest selling artists in the country. A few years ago, no one knew him. But let's go back to the stage where no one knew him.
Right.
And he comes on the scene. How do you spot that talent? Now, Anil Dharker is not a pretty artist.
Right.
Okay? He's taking very often he's just taking a photograph and giving it a twist of some kind. Someone looking at it first time will say, this is very banal, and would pass it by and say, alright, Anjali Menon I can understand. Because her paintings have something which appeals to me. Maybe they are even very beautiful to look at. But Anjali Menon hasn't gone up as quickly as someone like Atul Lodhia has,
Right.
though she's been painting much longer.
Sure.
Now, as a initial collector, how am I going to spot that difference, that potential which you are talking about?
Right.
Where do I get a sense of that?
I think there is a sense of that again from research, where you get it from the artist, you get it from the
And
gallery.
in the research, this is a new artist.
So the research that you get that from a sense, an insider sense, that pulse about him, about the strength of his promoter, that this promoter feels from promoting him. Supposedly Valera was supposed to promote an Anil Dharker, and depending on how strongly they feel about this, I mean, what is the undercurrent of the market? What are the curators talking about? What are the critics talking about? What is it really? What is it that is behind all the hype that you're seeing really in the, that is on the surface level. So I think it needs really to go a little deeper than just what is being shown on,
The problem is, you mentioned a word which has now become alien to India, which is critic. There are no critics. Hardly any newspaper carries any criticism of art.
Sure.
The Times of India does. And this is a huge handicap, because when I want to see a movie and I read the film reviews, I get a sense of what I want to see or don't, right? Similarly with books. But when it comes to art, there is no criticism. Now, so if a gallery owner or an auction house wants to promote a particular artist because they managed to grab that person, the intrinsic value of that artist may not be so high,
Right.
but they want to promote it.
Right.
There is no filter of that critic who's going to say that this work is rubbish.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So then you're depending, so then the promotion is all.
Right. I think basically it depends on you. I think, like you said, when you go to watch a film, you understand that, Anil Mohammad's review, and you go by that. I think similarly.
Anil Mohammad's reviews you should ignore.
But basically, people read the review of it, of the film and realize that that's what would normally follow. So let's say that as an example in film. I think similarly, there is obviously for the serious person that is seriously interested in finding out, there is an undercurrent that you get from the insider. Obviously in the art market, everything is about being an insider, which is where the.
I'm sorry to go on about this, but you are assuming things. I, as an art collector, beginning art collector, I'm not an insider.
So
I'm a complete outsider.
That's what I'm driving upon, and you have to become an insider before you start.
How do I become an insider?
So you become an insider by attending openings, by interacting with people, by understanding what other collectors have bought before, who are the other collectors that have bought Atul Lodhia's work, for example, that you are going to buy. What is their sense of him? What does an auction house feel about an artist like Atul Lodhia? What is a gallery? What does a top? Just ask 5 top stakeholders what they feel about the artist that you're about to buy, and their belief in his potential to go up and his potential to perform in the market, and what they aesthetically feel. The curator will be able to give you the aesthetic perspective, or market perspective will come from the auction house, and a gallery will be able to give you a primary market perspective. And the artist's profile, if you do nothing and just read the artist's profile, at the back of every catalogue is the artist's profile, which people never read, but I think that gives you a huge insight into where, as he's shown before, as he's shown with, random galleries, just about, they sometimes have a list of like 300 galleries that they've shown with, but that means nothing. I mean, if they have, 20 strong, you will know when, who are the serious.
That means, to start with, I must know which are the good galleries.
Correct. You have to know, that's what I'm saying, you need to understand the market before you start. You need to know who are the top 5 galleries, who are the top 5 artists, who are the top 5 auction houses, who are the, and all who are the top 5 critics, and, what is this whole how does this work? What motivates, what influences these trends? And what is, there's a group of influencers at any given point in time that influence a trend, an upward trend in a market. And those are, critics, curators, galleries, auction houses, promoters. And you need to understand this upward movement of the trend before you start, buying art. Because, otherwise you will only learn while buying, to make your mistakes. And then that's unfortunately not the point at which you want to get all this information. You want to get this way before and then into that.
Very often, many of these trends that you talk about are actually dictated not by Indian buyers or Indian galleries, but foreign buyers.
Sure.
Like someone like Subodh Gupta, for example,
Sure.
was not considered such a huge artist till he had foreign buyers lapping up his work.
Sure.
And for us, he was just collecting utensils and was stacking them up. But they cost a fortune now.
Right.
So again, for a collector that's going to be very difficult because this foreign trends he doesn't see. And by the time they happen, it's too late. Because that artist has become completely unaffordable. Right?
So I think it's just really to be able to gauge this potential, to kind of see the making of the trend before it peaks, is to find out way before about there are emerging artists, developing artists, established artists, and masters. If you obviously buy, and the timing at which you buy, and the peak, whether you buy an artist's work at the peak of his career, whether you buy his work when he's just a nobody, or you buy his work when he's, on his way down, on the downward spiral in the market, affects your investment. So I think you need to be able to move with the time. You need to be able to move with the upward trend in the market, and you need to be able to gauge this upward trend.
You have to catch the upward trend right in the beginning.
Right in the beginning. Not when you don't buy.
When it's at its peak, it's too late.
Yes, if you buy this Botuka vessel at 100,000, when you could have ideally done it, when it was on it, when it was really selling for literally nothing. You don't. That's not the time to buy. When he's already, the hype comes out, that's when the story's over. You need to have invested or bought your works before, which is why research is the key in all of these. In art buying, I think it's important. Is an important factor, and to understand what it is that you must pay. Even there are thumb rules to say that for emerging artists you pay 30,000 rupees. There's a benchmark thumb rule price that all galleries know and all auction houses know and pay. So which maybe they don't tell you, they don't share with you. But they all know that there is a price at which you pay. For an emerging artist, this is what I would pay.
30,000 rupees? Where? Nothing like 30,000.
There used to be a trend. Like
young artists coming out from Baroda, pricing them at 1 lakh and 2 lakhs.
So in 1995 and 97, there were Hussains and Razas available at 2 lakhs. So that was the time that you should have bought a Hussain or a Raza. Not now when it's 550 lakhs and maybe between 50 lakhs and 5 crores. Right now, you're sort of almost risking the whole, if you buy a Raza now, you may buy a splendid work, but you don't know the future of where it's going to go. Ideally, if you miss that trend, you realize that, okay, I didn't buy it in 1995, so now I'm in 2013 today. So who in 2013, what is the market looking like? Who are the artists?
Okay, let's get specific. Who would you buy now? Name 5 artists. Share it with us.
Manjeet Kaur.
My God, he's already too expensive. Too expensive. Of course, because he's dead, he's not going to produce anymore. Another dead artist. Any living artist you would like to name?
Still good stories. 5 artists, I would probably say Anil Dharker. I would think amongst the younger artists.
Don't you think Anil Dharker has already reached a peak?
Yes, she has, but I think she still has. She's still at a level where she has the potential to grow from where she is. I think she's an Bharti care, but again she's way off the affordable bracket. So I would say a Manjunath Kamat, affordable. Manjunath Kamat, Sakshi artist. So there's Ravindra Reddy. Those are the 5 Ravindra stories.
Ravindra Reddy with the heads.
With the heads. Again,
too expensive.
So, but most of them.
How do you zone in on someone like Manjunath Kamat?
I think you find because of you first get a sense of what is happening, where is he showing. You talk to an artist, it's not very difficult. Even if you talk to a guy and ask him what, you get a sense, you get a pulse. When somebody talks, you will know whether they're successful.
I don't get the pulse, I don't have the pulse.
You will get a sense, it's not.
And anyone heard of this artist?
It's not.
You have? Raj, unfair, you're collector.
He's ignorant.
You have, okay. So there are 3 hands out there.
So I think, it is about, that shows the seriousness of their, if they're really serious buyers.
Done their work.
They've done their work. the ones that have succeeded in their processes have obviously done their research. No successful investor across any asset class just goes out there and, picks on things and says, I'm just going to bet on this and see how this goes. I mean, even stocks or even companies, anything you buy, you would have to do, sound research and get to know what is as is, not what the hype is telling you. I think most people go wrong. The mistake to avoid are not to believe into hype, not to just buy into the, sort of ongoing, it's to sort of make your own assessment of what is going on. What does this seem? Does this seem, if there's a 100% shoot up in price in like 3 years, there's also going to be that steep fall in the artist, there's be a slow, steady, gradual movement of.
Why would there be a steep drop?
Because that market.
Because it's manipulated, you're saying?
Yeah, because it's manipulated or market move in 3 ways. One is upward, downward, and consolidation. So anything that goes up comes down. So you have to, obviously, if you're playing in the market, you find your way to go and you go. To find the upward trend, you have to go up with the wave and not crash with the downward trend. That's what every investor's motivation is to do. Any investor across any.
And when you get a painting and do you treat it like a good stock and then don't fall in love with it and get completely unemotional and sell it. I heard this discussion between Durva and her husband Kumar in the car, and he was saying that you should never fall in love with your painting. You should treat it like a bit like a nice stock. You should churn.
That's what I'm saying, that different people come from different motivations. There's the guy coming from the investing, the finance background will always have that view. Whereas the person coming from aesthetics will always have this view. A collector will always have a view, to hold and to hoard and to build a vision and to build a massive and to build the world's most, spectacular collection, or to, find that niche within the gap that I can fill. That okay, maybe I should just go and buy, Jagannath pandas, goats, for example. There are people, there are different collectors, there are different visions, and I think each, a collector's vision is always to hoard, whereas an investor's vision is always to do.
What would you advise?
I think it's a combination of both. Most collectors would know that there are works of art that you buy that you only love and that you're never going to sell. They are just for your permanent collection. That's most galleries have.
Should you then have some works which are like will stay forever?
Yes.
And
yes.
Some which you might sell off?
Yes, I think so.
You would do
and
that?
I think I think I would do that. And I think most people are very, afraid or very sort of intimidated by this whole selling side of art, which is what I wanted to break with the book, because I think a lot of people have a lot of apprehension about that, oh my God, I don't want to be seen as, as selling art. What are people going to think about me if I'm going to go out and sell? It's not seen as a very professional, it's not seen as a professional asset class because it's a nascent market. But I think it's about time we understand, that there's going to be 2 sets in your whole thing. One set of work you just buy and hold for the rest of your life and you will never part with. And there's another set of works that you buy and you know that, okay, they're great, but, this is a market-driven trend. If you get a tip from somebody and if you understand that if you've call upon this knowledge that, okay, this artist, maybe you don't like the artwork or maybe you don't like the artist, you still buy sometimes because you feel that it's going to be an upward move or you will be able to, churn within 6 months or churn this within 2 years. So you buy different things with different, when you buy a work of art, you already have a very clear, defined motivation behind it.
If someone was just starting off a collection, what should be the size of his kitty?
I think it really, it doesn't, I in fact feel that you should not, there is no such thing as, a minimum bracket. I think there are, different people can buy different kinds of work. So supposedly you were buying to decorate your home and that you were a first time buyer and you were looking to, there's nothing wrong with that, with that thought. Only thing is you have to be careful about not getting caught in the hype. You have to be careful about, at the same time, if you're going to spend that money, I would say, buy what you like within what is also a good investment. So you do that research, find what might also be a good investment, and buy with that intent. And anything from 2 lakhs, under 2 lakhs is a good place to start. It's not necessarily, you don't necessarily, not all people always start with, a budget of 2 crores. Where you are, and you will find that kind of, whether you're an emerging, established.
So 2 lakhs?
Yeah.
And I think one thing which I've learned from experience is at least the beginning, not to trust your own taste too much. When I started buying art, I bought some stuff which now I deeply regret. And I don't know, I thought it was terrific looking, now I'm embarrassed by it. I'm so embarrassed that I don't even want to sell it because people say, Anil Dharker bought this, you know.
I think most of us learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
All of us have those, first few works that you buy and then you think like, oh my god, did I buy that? But I don't feel like that about, maybe I still love those works from their aesthetic standpoint, but maybe they don't mean anything in terms of market. Maybe they don't, but if you, I think that's what I mean, that you need to know what it is that you have. If your strength is not aesthetics, then trust somebody else's eye. If you think you have a great eye, and you think you have, then just go.
Everyone thinks he has a great eye. This is always the danger.
That's the problem.
No one says, oh God, I've got such terrible taste,
Well, I think it's really to see it for what it is. To be able to see your strengths and your weaknesses for what they are. For any good investor, for any successful person, for them to succeed at doing whatever they're doing, whether it's acting or cooking or writing, if you're not able to see your, weaknesses for what they are, you will never be able to.
I think it's always good to get a sense from other people.
You may not necessarily trust your own eye. Maybe you ask 5 other people to say, I'm thinking of buying this artist. Do you think it's ridiculous, or do you think, and if 5 people tell you it's ridiculous, then you trust them, and then don't debate with them saying that, oh my God. If you are buying a work of art, I would say ask 5 galleries. Have you heard of this guy? What do you think of him? Maybe they will say, no, we haven't. If 3 out of 5 say they haven't, just don't bother. Go to the next. There are enough works available out there. Just, find 5 people there out there in 5 different, one critic, one curator, gallery, an auction house, whoever you can reach, a collector, an investor, and see if they all, at least 3 of them, are in sync on what you're going to buy. Don't just think you're so superb and, don't just start with overconfidence.
Okay, Durva, we'll end there because we let people read the book.
Sure.
But maybe some questions can be.
Yeah, if there's anybody, any questions from the audience?
Is there a mic in the audience? Any questions from anyone?
There is always some problem about duplicates in art. So how to find it?
Okay, so what was your question? So your question is...
There are fakes.
Yeah, but what is your question?
How to find it?
How do you know a fake work from a real one? Okay, so basically there are experts in the market. So if you were to buy a work of art, you would get it, the authenticity certificate that comes with it, provenance letter that comes with it from the provenance that was, basically like property where you change hands from A buyer to B buyer to C buyer. So all those documents that come with it, and you get it authenticated even from the gallery. The gallery gives you an invoice, the gallery from where you're buying, so that gallery takes responsibility as well. And if it's a artist that is living, you can always get an authenticity certificate signed by the artist. Whereas if the artist is deceased, I think then in the case of artists that are not living, it's even more slightly more difficult there to sort of tell the fakes. But there are experts in the market who will be able to do that job, and will value the work, will be able to tell you whether that's at a small cost. I think that cost is, most people in India would think, I don't want to spend any money to do all of this, but it's really necessary if you want to, if you've got to set the system right from the start. Because when you want to eventually sell it, all of these papers will determine the quality of your investment.
Yeah, I'd like to add that Picasso, he used to say, all right, if someone went to him, and if he liked the drawing, he said, yes, that's fine. That I didn't. If he didn't like it, he said, no, I didn't.
And Picasso was Picasso.
In your book, have you addressed the type of buyer who buys for snob value? This is one question, which is very valid. And secondly, how the price tag of work affects the aesthetics of the work. Does the aesthetic change according to price tag, or it remains steady?
No, in fact, the price is determined by the aesthetic of the work. So I think if it's, depending on the quality of the work, the price is determined. So it really depends on the kind of artist, the exposure the artist has had, his previous, experience, his so to say, his profile, and who are the people that have bought his works, who are the people that have collected his works, what museums is he present in. All of that determines the the price of the artwork. So I think, and the quality of the aesthetics within an artist's work. Suppose there are 20 works of Atul Dodia, the aesthetic value would actually determine the price. Correct. There could be a good Hussein and a bad Hussein. So within the same artist, it's the aesthetic that determines it.
I have two questions. One is, you actually know someone who's become an art millionaire, who didn't start out by being a millionaire. And the second question is, why is Indian journalism so bad about art?
Why is Indian journalism so
Yeah,
bad?
why do Indian papers and magazines not cover art?
Well, I think to answer your first question, yes, I do know, most art galleries, most art buyers, sellers. I mean, there are enough people that have, there's records, I mean, that tell you that people have actually made money in their, art purchases. They may not have necessarily sold them, but their asset value has gone up. So things that they bought, it's like anything you bought about 20 years ago, and the price of it today on paper is definitely appreciated. People have sold those and, made money from those. Yes, so there are enough people that are art millionaires from that space. Yes, so it is definitely, one needs to understand, it's not that everybody who goes and buys art, every art buyer becomes a millionaire, but, if you, it's like not every stock, I think not every business successful, not every business becomes a success. So, same. So, to answer your second question, I think I should get an answer.
Well, I think this is a very, very sad reflection on our media, and it's been going downhill for the past 10-15 years, and the whole art of criticism has declined. That's because newspapers now feel that the people who read about art are so few, and this would be, I know that I worked in the Times of India, that they feel space is at a premium. They look at it in terms of advertising value, that each square centimeter, column centimeter can fetch this much money. Therefore, if you have a news item or an article, how many people will read it? Which is why, the more esoteric parts are not now in the paper. Art criticism is considered esoteric.
But no specialized.
Times of India has even done away with book reviews.
No
Because they feel not
specialized.
too many people read books. This is very much unlike the West, where criticism of all kinds is given huge prominence, and that helps actually educate the reader. This is very short-sighted in parts of our media. The trouble is, I don't own a newspaper. I don't even run one. Maybe Rajasthan Dharker should start a paper.
I think the question is the quality of the critics. With the social networking and critics on the internet, the quality of the critics in India, it must be desired, whether it's the New York Times or any newspaper is run to there is a certain quality of the art.
That's because an art critic is valued. They are well paid. Their scholarship is encouraged. Here, when you have an art critic, he or she is doing it on the side. They are not going to earn enough money. They don't have an incentive to learn more about their subject. Therefore, it becomes very shallow exercise. And the other point is that because, in spite of a large population, these particular circles are very, very small, then that critic gets to know that artist personally. So his critical faculties about that artist are now influenced by his friendship. And he is not going to be critical because it will affect his friendship. So these are the factors which affect.
So how much of the value of a piece of art depends upon the skills of the artist himself to market himself, or to Like self-sell?
So are you asking for an artist, from an artist's perspective, how much of...
Not from an artist, I mean, I just want to know in general. When you fix the value of a piece of art, how much of it deals with, how much of it is contributed by the self-selling skills of the artist himself?
And I think
Because there could be more than one.
I think basically there is the skill of, a gallery will spot, a good eye can spot a, potential artist from the work that he does. Of course, but if he can also speak well, that's only an added benefit, because then that's that much easier for him to reach his market. A gallery or a promoter can only promote you, a certain, can go all the way, but can only do a certain amount, can only go a certain way. But I think after a certain point, it is really, the artist's own self-selling skills that really take him to the next level. So most artists who use color, photography, they all obviously have superb selling skills, but the gallery takes them to a certain level from where they have potential to a certain, price point and a certain market exposure. And then I think it's the artist that takes over after that. He himself places his works in all the museums.
Self-promotion from an artist really helps. There's no doubt about it. I think a classic case is M.F. Hussain. Hussain was a major artist, there's no doubt about it. He created breakthroughs in many ways, in his art, in marketing abroad, etc. But he was a self-promoter of the absolutely in the top range. So that even when he had a haircut, which he didn't do very often, there was a photographer present. So it became an event. His haircut became an event. So he invented ways of being in the news all the time. And that's an extreme case I'm giving you. But a lot of artists promote themselves. If you're an artist, you're able to speak well, you're able to give a very intelligent kind of sheen to what you're doing in terms of painting. That definitely adds to your value. As opposed to an artist who's completely tongue-tied and has nothing to say. So, and some artists give very, very mundane captions to their painting. And that certainly devalues that art. So there are all these subtleties, going on.
So I think it's your inner process. Most artists feel that marketing is a separate job altogether, and they're very, averse to marketing. But I think it's really marketing for an artist, from an artist's perspective, is really communicating your inner processes and that your motivation behind creating that work. And unless you're able to communicate that with an audience, there is nobody out there that can sell your work for you. So most artists that say, I'm not the marketing type and it's not my job to market and it's the gallery that will do it. The galleries also want to work with people who they see will have potential to market themselves eventually, so it works both ways.
Could you tell us about your own path of connection in the art industry? How did you go about in your career?
So I have a background in design and I studied applied art. I started running a design studio in 1999, and that's when I graduated in applied art. I started designing coffee table books for the art and art fraternity. And at the time, I was the youngest. Art was always close to the heart. So my final year campaign at the Visual Arts School was still on the National Gallery of Modern Art. So I chose to take on the NGMA as my campaign project. And then I presented it to the committee, and I was soon Saryu invited me to become the youngest executive member of the NGMA at the time. And so whilst I was working in advertising, for about the first 6 months I realized I was working in advertising, and then I quit there to sort of start up my own design studio. And all the, I just started designing for all the art galleries and doing branding work and doing a lot of book design for a lot of the artists and galleries and that whole publishing. And from designing, I started publishing them. And then I started, instead of sort of moving from sort of moving from one book to 100 books. I started moving in a more horizontal journey, whereas from designing to publishing to curating to consulting. And before I knew it, I was like a full-fledged art gallery with Readarts came about in 2010. But until then, all the collection from all the money that I made, which was not a lot of money at the time when I started, but I invested all of that back into buying art. I bought works of artists whose works I loved, and whose works I didn't think about the market at the time really. I didn't even know about the market. I was quite naive at the time when I started buying art, like most of us are when we start. And I learned from my mistakes, and but over the years I sort of, started turning those works and consulting galleries and all of that. So I started, getting better works, bigger works of, better artists, and, started turning my portfolio around. And that's how it started. And I made expensive mistakes. I bought Jogain's works. I bought into Hype in 2009 when I bought 2 large works of Jogain from Seema show, for 13 lakhs or some number like that at that time. It was not money at the time to pay for Jogain's. And that was at the time his career at peak, and fortunately for me, because I was also consulting and I was also churning, I was able to sell one of those works away. And, so I was able to sell one away, and hence both of the others were sort of literally free for me. And, but the value of those works today is really nothing. And the one work that I still have, Jogain, basically, one learns from one's mistakes. It is probably worth, at the moment, I paid 5 lakhs for that one work, and 1.7 I sold one for 15, and the other one that I have today is worth maybe 3. So, all in all, it means nothing. But what I'm trying to share this so that one understands that it doesn't necessarily mean that you start out with, all your, you start with the best works of Hussain. You learn, every collector learns along the way. So you sort of take that.
You've been primarily talking about the gallery as the medium. But of late there is three of new people who are called curators, and they are very, very influential in advising people how to buy art and so that is curator too, they are very important role, more important role than the gallery themselves. Number 2, a lot of these people believe that in art we have this side, feel like something on something that is going to be money. And coming back to your conclusion that anything makes mistakes which are actually proportional to investment, is that what you're saying is good art?
No,
if art doesn't end the day, doesn't give you the return, is that supposed to be bad art?
No, I don't think that good or bad art has anything to do with its value or its investment. But I think good art is good art, whether there's value for it or not. I mean, a work of for example, an artist maybe worth nothing as of now, but that doesn't take away the value, the sort of value from the intrinsic value of the work. So you still live with works that you that you like and that you bought along the way. But if you're it's just what happens along the way is that your motivation changes. So it's just that when you start out, you buy with just your motivation is to decorate your walls, and as you evolve in that whole decoration of home is what most people start out with. But as you evolve in your collection, then you start saying, what I want to collect all, perhaps you find a line of your own thread that connects to you and speaks to you as your own collection. That I start buying women's works of, say, from the 70s, and I'm going to get all the artists that did work, so or the canvas work with women in that period, because I feel strongly about. So I'm just giving you an example. So basically, there are different your motivation changes along the way. Earlier, your interest was only decorating your wall, whereas now your interest has moved from that to becoming creating a visionary collection. And as you still evolve, there are some works that you still buy, like I said, to invest, and there are still, if those that you bought for investment do not turn out to be a good investment, then they seem to be mistakes. So, what you bought to in the height of the market, thinking that this was going to go up, and I bought it at 10, it's going to become 100, and it doesn't go to 100, and it price drops from 10 to like 2. That's when all the pain starts coming into this.
So I think the secret is not to get carried away with the hype. I think that is a very, very important thing, and it's such an obvious lesson, but it's something we all ignore. Anyway, thank you, Durva. That's very enlightening. Thank all of you for being here. And what is that? I can give away. Demis Godino. Milen Rivero. Viraj Naik. Sandesh Nayak. Supriya Menezes. Shashikant Sardesai. The last one is Sneha Bhandari. I was saving this for the last. Thank you. Is there more wine?
I would just like to say thank you very much to Durva for a most interesting discussion and for Anil for asking some of the most rigorous questions. I think anybody who has a book to sell will face it. If you can handle him, you can handle anybody, is what I would say. Thank you very much, Anil. Thank you very much, Durva. And everybody else, please enjoy a drink and a little snack.